Cohasset, and welcome to a very special edition of Our Town, the 2013 Selectmen Debate. I'm Mark DeGiacomo, and tonight we have the four candidates who are running for the two open seats on the Board of Selectmen. I'll start off by just quickly introducing them. Steve Gomer, Lee Jenkins, Karen Quigley, and Russ Benetti. Thank you, all of you, for coming in tonight.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for having us.
Now, let's just go over the ground rules so everybody, you guys and everyone out there, understands what we'll be doing. I'm going to ask a series of questions. Each person will have 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes to answer the question. Each question will be answered by everybody. I reserve the right to ask follow-ups and also to press if I don't think you've asked the answered the actual question. I drafted the questions, so you can blame me or give me credit or just ignore me entirely. There are no gotcha questions, notwithstanding several phone calls and requests that I did receive. The questions are meant to deal with issues that are current in Cohasset and issues that I think voters would like to hear from the candidates about. Again, you'll each have 3 minutes to answer, and then at the end, you'll each have 3 minutes to do a closing remark. We plan to run for about an hour and a half, all told. So, if everyone's ready, we will start with the first question. And Steve, you'll start us off, please. The hiring and contract extension of Mike Milanowski as town manager has been a major issue in Cohasset. What is your opinion of the process? And now that the amendment to the Town Manager Act has been passed, should Mike be hired as the permanent town manager?
Well, thanks for the question. It actually is very similar to one that you'd asked in an interview. My opinion of the process as it unfolded was that it was haphazard, and one of the things that I've noted consistently through this campaign is that process is the core of a good, predictable government. The process that was enacted was, as I noted, haphazard, and the result was that I believe a fair number of constituents, of taxpayers in town, felt that in fact we didn't produce the best result. Whether or not that was the case, that was the feeling. It led to, as was noted, fights over the Town Manager Act revisions, which were long necessary. The second part of your question, which with regard to the individual, Mike Milanowski, continuing on as town manager, is harder because, number one, it pretends that I might know whether or not Mike Milanowski actually wants to continue. As you know, it's become a battle about a person who's logged long hours in good faith, trying to execute the job as town manager, and in fact has been vilified in many cases for those efforts. By no means is that a defense of job performance, which I do not have the capability of assessing. I am not one of his bosses at the moment. There are 5 of those. One is sitting beside me. However, I will say that as a committee member, as a committee chair, I've been very impressed with the way that he has been able to execute a process on behalf of the town residents, especially with regard to preparation of the capital budget, which is the area that I was directly involved in, as well as preparation of the overall town budget through the budget planning group, another area in which I was involved.
Okay. So you're critical of the process.
Prior process, yes.
Yes. So what would you have done differently in connection with the process?
I believe that even in the instance of such an emergency, laying out a temporary town manager made sense, but then extending that contract should have pulled in at that point other contenders.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm sorry, and by the way, you did ask the question as to whether or not I would support hiring Mike as a permanent town manager. The question you had asked in the interview was very similar. I would support absolutely Mike being one of the candidates, should Mike want to be.
Okay. Lee, Steve says the process was haphazard. You were in there running the process. What do you think?
After the
the town manager that we had on board was terminated, the town had no leadership. And stability is a very important thing in these small towns. And looking at it from a selectman's point of view, we got somebody to come in, and we did ask more than one, and nobody wanted to volunteer to work for it. They worked for nothing for the first 2 weeks. They worked many hours, 70, 80 hours a week to try to stabilize the problems that the town had at the time. We then had a person that we thought was able to continue to do the work. So then we put him on a salary approximately the same as the town manager that we had. And after a few months, we realized this person could do the job. It is very important that that I'm going to go back to the same word, stabilization, to stabilize the town. It was in turmoil. We had, I think, 1, 2, 3. That's the 4th town manager in, let's see, probably a year and a half. I think it's just too disruptive to the town. So we opted to continue to sign him on, I believe, for 6 months. We were going to sign him on for longer, but our town council advised us not to. With the clause we can get rid of him if we had to. So we've been signing him on for 6 months. The last time we signed him on until the end of the year. I go back. He has stabilized the town, and by going out for another process, which I believe we should. If I'm reelected, I will vote for definitely go out look for other town managers. But at the same time, Malinowski will be included in the pick. I support Michael, as everybody probably knows. He's done an excellent job. He still has to be watched like any town manager. He has to be supervised, and that's what the selectmen weren't doing with the other town managers. And this one, yeah, every once in a while things don't go exactly where they're supposed to, but all the town managers have had the same problem. But I support the town manager as is right now.
So Lee, would you like to see Mike become the permanent town manager?
I think once he's put up against other applicants, yes. But I mean, only if he's the best qualified candidate.
Okay. Karen?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. Now, hiring and contract extension of Mike Malinowski as town manager has been a major issue in Cohasset. What is your opinion about the process? And now that the Town Manager Act has been amended, should Mike be hired as the permanent town manager?
I think I'd take a step back further and say that the process failed with the termination process of Mr. Coughlin, because it was inexcusable for the termination to take place without a plan for leadership going forward for the town. The town was left in the lurch, and at that time there are any number of retired town managers who come back, as Steve Lombard did for us when Bill Griffin retired, come back and excuse me, serve short term. They're experienced town managers. They know that they're acting town managers, that their job there is just to keep things moving along and do the necessary work, not to make sweeping changes. So the process failed at the very beginning, I think. Then the process failed when the Board of Selectmen chose what I would consider to be the easy way out, and rather than initiating a search to assure the citizens of the town that the best candidate had been chosen, they continued on just extending and renewing contracts. There was a lot of conversation as to whether that was indeed legal to do, and so now would I support Mr. Malinowski? That's an interesting word. I think that anyone who is qualified should be allowed, or not allowed is the wrong word, should apply for a job that they seek. If that person is the best qualified person, then they will be hired. But I would not support any candidate. I think that it needs to be fair and impartial and open and transparent process.
But you've been a close observer of Mike's work over the last several months. If you're on the Board of Selectmen and he is one of the candidates who wants to come on, would you vote in favor of him?
You mean if there was a whole
Let's say, yeah, there's a process, there's finalists, there's Mike and a couple other people. Do you see a scenario where you would vote in favor of Mike to be permanent town manager?
No, I would not. I do not think that he has the experience necessary, the temperament to deal with the level of problems with the personalities that we have here in Cohasset. And I wouldn't support him for another reason, in that when you do put out advertise for a town manager, it is well known that if you say, as was recently done with the police chief's advertisement, we have a strong internal candidate, the best candidates don't apply, because that's a code word for this guy has the inside, or girl has the inside track.
Okay. Russ?
Yeah, I agree too. I think a lot of the problem was caused in the way that Mike Coughlin was let go. The process there caused a lot of animosity. Mike came in. I wasn't aware that they had also interviewed other people, honestly, for the interim job. But there should have been more interviews. I would think you would find people, like Karen said, like a Steve Lombard, who would be willing to come in and take on the job in an interim role. I think the selectmen failed in not defining what that interim role was going to be. And there have been changes made in with the proposed reorganization that show, I think, the inexperience on Mike's part in dealing with the personnel on that level, that's caused an awful lot of friction among people in town. The employees feel like they're left out of the deal at the moment, I think, people who I've spoken to. Mike appears to be doing a good job. We're doing well financially, a good job overall, but there have been a lot of little mistakes here and there that I think reflect that he's not been in that position in any capacity before. That he would make maybe a good assistant town manager from some of the mistakes he's doing. But that said, I believe we should do the search. We're doing it for the police chief. We certainly should do it for the town manager. I know a few towns in the area. Milton recently did a search and hired their assistant town manager. But in a couple cases, town managers who I've been familiar with from the Rhode Island area have also been out. I think we have a lot of qualified candidates out there. If Mike, after the screening process, is one of them, and I feel that he is the best qualified, I would consider him as a candidate for the position. But I think it's important to, just for the sake of the town, to go through the process, and also for the sake of the friction that it has caused, to let people know that this is an open process. I mean, Mike, by his own admission, had volunteered for the job, and a year later he's making more than any town manager that we've ever had, but not with the experience that those people have had.
All right, so you feel then that after Coughlin was let go, the board should have looked for a truly temporary person like Lombard?
Yeah.
But of
Yeah.
course, Milnowski was supposed to be temporary too, and is. I mean, he's not a permanent town manager.
Correct.
He's the guy that the selectmen wanted. Why shouldn't they just be able to pick who they want?
They should, but I think the person they would want would have some experience in that job, similar to what someone like Steve had. We had Jen Oram filling in on an interim basis. A lot of things that are being instituted more are what a permanent town manager would do. And it concerns me in the future, once these policies are in, if we do go with another candidate, how much of that's going to have to get undone? What other problems is that going to cause? That's something I think we need to consider, but we need to do a full search.
Thanks, Russ. All right, Lee, the next question is to you. Should the water and sewer departments be combined? And do you feel that there are any other structural changes that need to be made in town government?
It's a hot topic, only because we have three elected members on each department. The water department has 3 and the sewer department has 3. All along I've always said, since there's such an opposition to just having appointed sewer and water commissioners, I feel that we should keep it the way we have it, combine them, have 3 water and 3 sewer, or however you want to work it, on the board. Have a DPW board, really, that's what it should be, as far as I'm concerned, as a civil engineer. I'm talking only as an engineer, and I've worked on some of these different departments in different locations. We should be able to have a board with 6. That means you need 1 more. I believe the town manager should be sitting on that board. That gives the 7th. That gives him insight on what the board's doing and what projects are coming forward. Now that we have a civil engineer on board, he would also be working for this group. It's very important because no matter what anybody thinks, water and sewer are very similar. One produces the water, one gets rid of the water. This is what civil engineers are trained to do, is to run these departments. This is not complicated, and we're doing this outside anyways. We have outside professionals coming in and doing the work. We don't have our own employees. I also would like to bring in my opinion, is to bring in the DPW and the buildings department. And now we have a true DPW board, which has really started with the water and the sewer. Now I forgot the last part of the question.
The last part is, do you feel there are any other structural changes that should be made to
I think you
town
just
government?
did.
I just covered that, but that's very important for it's the true operations of the town. It's being run by, in theory, it's being run by the civil engineer with 7-member board. He just reports to them as a consultant. Now there's some other departments that should be moved around too for better utilization of these departments. They're talking about a permitting department. That's not a major change, it's just moving people into one area, so it's the convenience of the citizens that they can come in and get all their permits in one location. And there's a few other things that have to be rearranged, but I feel very strongly that there should be, down the road it'll happen anyways. This whole thing will happen.
Well, what is the advantage to combining the water and sewer? If you're still going to have 3 water people and 3 sewer people, and they're going to be on the committee with the town manager, is there cost savings, or how does it? You're not making them appointed.
Okay.
You're still keeping them elected.
Because I'm bringing in the DPW and buildings. And that's the whole key here, is it's a full DPW operation.
So you'd be adding them to the existing DPW.
Right, and they can actually do this as long as there's a civil engineer or an engineer that's working with them.
Okay. And is there a cost savings to the town, or?
Better utilization of personnel. That's how I look at it. I mean, we can use. I would like to see down the road, only down the road, that the DPW, all the equipment is at the DPW.
Mm-hmm.
At the present time, the sewer department has no real equipment, but the water department has a backhoe and air compressor, which I've complained for 10 years. It usually it does come out for the snow, but it's still sitting down there. And as far as I'm concerned, equipment should be at the DPW, and the water and sewer comes to the DPW to get the equipment. Or we could have the maintenance people on the roads for the sewer and water lines can be working for the DPW, but that's their full-time job, is the water and the sewer. And if they're not doing that, they could be. That's where the savings could be. If they weren't doing any excavation or any particular type of work that they were assigned to do, they could work for the DPW. Which
As
would be
long as they don't mix up the pipes or anything with the sewer. Well, we wouldn't want that. Karen?
Well, as you know, this is something that I have a stake in. As a selectman, I did advocate for it. It's been recommended to us by 3 independent reports over a period of, I forget all the dates now, I knew them like that at one time, over, say, 20 years, that this is the way most, I shouldn't say most, but, and again, I knew that number at a time, towns are handling. They have a supervisor, and they call it different things. Sometimes it's a superintendent, sometimes it's a supervisor, DPW, utilities, whatever. Water and sewer are under them. And in many communities, it is also the DPW, and I think that there would be some advantage to bringing all of those in together, and also building facilities under one supervisor who would have engineering credentials. I did bring forward, I was unsuccessful as a selectman, I did bring forward a citizen's petition to do just that, and it was defeated. Looking back over the past 2 years, I see now the pitfalls that could happen in doing that. I no longer think that, that they should be appointed. I do think that they should remain elected. However, part of the reason, my reasoning in bringing it in addition to all the efficiencies that Lee has already covered, is the fact that presently we have independently elected, and this has been forever, independently elected water and sewer commissions by virtue of the fact that they're enterprise funds. There has been a mindset in town hall that these are totally separate and independent departments. They are not. They are departments of the town. An enterprise fund is nothing more than an accounting vehicle. And I think that that is a reason there has been, we had the insolvency of the Water Enterprise Fund. There has been some question over the monies in the Sewer Enterprise Fund. And I think that part of that grows out of the fact that we have this independent mindset. And I think that it is brought in within the government, within the town departments, so that everybody is working together, that there would be more efficiencies and serve the public better.
So you envision, again, elected officials, 6, is that, which was Lee suggested, does that make sense to you?
No, I would go for 5. I think it's always better to have an odd number. If you have an even number, you can very well get 3 ties all the time and never get anything accomplished.
Lee's suggestion on that was just to have the town manager be the odd man out or whatever, but you'd rather see a 5-person. And would these people, in your mind, run some for water, some for sewer, or is it water sewer commissioner?
It would be
sewer water commissioner.
Combined water sewer board. I would never advocate combining the enterprise funds. They're different ratepayers. They should be kept totally separate.
Any other structural changes in town government that you feel strongly about at this point?
No, that was the main one. There were a number of things that we had explored when the budget planning group first began. I quite frankly don't know where some of those stand at this point. There are things that are worth looking at. I think that is the big structural. Just changed my mind. Yes, I do.
One more, real quick.
I think that the reorganization of the town hall that was brought forward is not a bad thing, and it is something that I had talked to Bill Griffin about. I think it was not what was being done; it was the way it was being done, which speaks to the inexperience and the lack of abilities of the acting town manager, but also of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, Russ.
In Narragansett, it comes under DPW, both the water and the sewer. As far as whether there's a benefit to an elected or an appointed board, I think there's more accountability to the ratepayers if it is elected. It removes the feeling that the town is somehow manipulating the department, and I think, though, that it should come under DPW, as Lee pointed out, where there's similar equipment in some cases that can be shared. I think anything that's going to make the department run more efficiently is well worth considering. Other things in the government structure, I agree also with Karen on the town hall renovation proposal. That's something I think that we need to look at.
Renovation or reorganization?
Oh, the reorganization,
Right.
I'm sorry. I think that needs to be vetted in a different way to the employees. As I told you when we had our interview, I worked for a bank from the Newton area that merged with a bank in Boston. We had two of everything, all departments, and we all knew that there were going to be some layoffs coming through. But they had people come in who spent time with the employees to see what it is they actually do, to see where there may be crossing of responsibilities that can be combined and result in some savings. There was a series of meetings with all the employees, which I understand in a lot of cases people found out the day before everything went to the selectmen, what was going to be going on with their jobs as far as their incomes, their hours, their benefits. I think that's one of the things we need to do is get a full-time professional HR department. We're in effect a corporation, and I think it would make it more well-defined to the individuals what their responsibilities are, and it would make sure that we're following all the different laws concerning employees.
Thanks, Russ. Want to make it unanimous there, Steve?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. There are really two areas that you're asking about. One of them is governance. The second of those is operations. From a governance standpoint, you have elected officials, the Sewer Commission, the Water Commission, who represent the ratepayers. The ratepayers in the Water Commission, however, only represent 90% of the town as a whole. The ratepayers in sewer, about 50%. Interestingly enough, those enterprise funds that Karen had identified are separate accounting bodies. But interestingly enough as well, they've been pilfered from time to time by different town managements, previous town managements. That on its own is enough to make certain that I would never propose until we have solid plans to separate finances from a combined commission and from the town as a whole, such that they can't be rated again. The ratepayers for sewer support the sewer department. The ratepayers for water do the same for the water department. Those crossovers are not contiguous, and they're, as you can tell, no one is 100% with the town. The town's deal in this is that they're the backstop, the financial backstop. When we go out to borrow money, the town as a whole stands behind the enterprise funds saying, we'll pay it back if the ratepayers don't. I'm sorry, I don't see that as a workable solution from a governance standpoint. However, from an operational standpoint, yes, both systems can be operated by the same private contractor. And as a matter of fact, there have been lively discussions about that. Generally speaking, I believe the commissions are both in favor of going out for joint contracting. In effect, right now, the town manager sits on both commissions as a management representative. That's an important consideration, but it's especially important to keep the finances separate, wholly separate. As to reorganization within the town, frankly, I think the entire town should be looked at, and all of our functions should be looked at from the standpoint of delivering services efficiently according to our needs or our desires. Very quickly, there are particular areas where this has already come to pass. The Capital Budget Committee took up the charge of analyzing the town's IT needs because, frankly, no one else wanted to do it. In effect, we put together a plan for a combined IT strategy that was then taken up and championed by our new superintendent of schools, Barbara Cataldo, and Mike Milanowski. The end result has been a vast improvement, about a $750,000 investment in IT, long needed in schools, but with a plan behind it. And that plan basically lowers our IT costs over time. Another area that I think we should look at is cash collections. At the moment, we have zero controls over cash collections as they come in. This has been cited in 6 past auditors' reports, auditors' letters to the town and the selectmen as a whole. Frankly, I think that we could quickly streamline our cash collections and even speed them up if we would adopt what, frankly, we all can do on the internet, which is to simply pay on the internet. Every single bill that you have, pay it on the internet. Any cash that has to be paid, pay it over the collector's counter in town hall. There are any number of areas where we could focus on streamlining. But the real question is, again, what are our goals? The goals ought to be, what do the taxpayers want for services? What are they willing to pay for services? Once we know that, we can really start to focus in.
Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
All right, Karen, you'll start us off on this next one. During the last couple of years, there have been numerous examples of less than civil exchanges before, during, and after meetings of several of our elected and appointed boards, as well as on the blogs. What can you do to tone down the rhetoric and encourage a more respectful debate of the issues that face the town?
Before I answer that, I take issue with Mr. Gomer saying that the enterprise funds have been pilfered. There are legitimate costs that can be accrued, assessed.
Allocated.
Thank you. Allocated against the enterprise funds for services provided by the town hall, whether it's the town manager, the finance department, and so forth. So I think that categorizing it as pilfering is not a fair assessment.
When the agreed to expenditures shared by town is $60,000 and the line item placed in the budget is $120,000 without knowledge of commissioners, I'd say that's pilfering. Call it what you will.
It sounds like maybe they can take money from it, but it's a question of even if they can, should they?
No, they should not. But my position is that certainly in my experiences that did not occur.
Oh, it did occur.
Well,
Steve
we'll,
disagrees.
we'll agree to disagree agreeably.
You can agree to disagree. We'll point it out in the budget.
Okay, let's
All
move on
right,
to the next
so
question then. So we're talking
the-
about civil
The
exchanges.
Civil exchanges, how apropos. I believe that that it was the responsibility, that this all began back with the termination of Mr. Coughlin, in which members of capital budget, of advisory, came to Board of Selectmen meeting and literally took over the meetings. There was screaming and yelling. It was very unprofessional. It was unseemly. The 5 selectmen at the time sat there and said nothing, mute. I believe that if at that time even one selectman had said, "Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I object to this behavior," then that behavior could have been nipped in the bud. As for the blogs, there's absolutely no excuse for the things that are being said. Certainly, I have no respect for any individual who will make a statement, a public statement, about a person and not have the courage to put their name on it. That part of it should be condemned by the Board of Selectmen to say that it is unacceptable behavior, that we don't condone it. But ultimately, that is up to the newspapers, and they can control it. It's up to them to decide that they want to run a civil website.
But as a member of the Board of Selectmen, what can you do to lower the rhetoric and lower the hostility on both the blogs and at meetings?
As a selectman, I'm not sure there's anything anybody can do to lower the rhetoric on the blogs. Again, that's up to the newspapers. As long as the newspapers are going to allow it, some individuals are going to do it. I firmly believe that if they put their names on it, they would not be doing that. As a selectman, again, you are the leaders of the town. You are the ones that set the tone and the policy. And if you do not condemn the rhetoric, the incivility in meetings, in your meetings, then you are condoning it. You are allowing it. It is up to a selectman to object. It is up to the chair of the Board of Selectmen to gavel the person down, and if necessary, to have that person removed.
Russ?
I think the failure was on the chair of the Board of Selectmen to try to keep the rhetoric down. When people are turning their backs to a speaker, as was happening towards the end of Mike's time with us, the type of things that were being flung at him without the chair stepping in is how things got out of control like they did. That's the job of a chairman, to make sure things remain civil. It seems also, though, that is what politics, even though this is a pretty low level of it, is turning into these days. There's a lot of gotcha, a lot of personal attacks, the blogs. I've had a few shots thrown at me in the blogs. Yeah, I tend to ignore them because anybody can yell at you in a crowd. I'd like to hear, how they feel face to face, and I think the papers can control that by requiring people to use their real name. If they suspect people are using multiple IP addresses, they could come up with a policy to try to control that. But you're dealing in the First Amendment, which gives them the freedom to print. It's what has caused it. Who knows? But it's the lack of the leadership of the town to stop in and say that this is not acceptable that has led to what's been going on, and it's just been escalating over the last number of years. What the Board of Selectmen can do, you can ask the newspapers to try to control it. I've not seen. I don't read that many blogs, but when you look at like the New York Times, you have to go in under your name. It's the social media has turned the debates into such an unsocial thing that it's something we all have to just sit down and come to an agreement that this is not an acceptable way.
Should the selectmen be looking at town computers to see whether any town employees have used those computers to put out some of these nasty blog entries?
A lot of the companies, I do work with Raytheon, for instance. And a lot of those companies, it's not a matter of whether you're blogging, it's a matter of whether you're using town equipment, in this case, to do anything other than town business.
So the selectmen have the power to do it, and they should do it. Is that what you're
They
saying?
have the power to do it, not just specifically for blogging, though. When March Madness comes in, there's a lot of man hours left people doing their pools. There's a lot of Christmas shopping that gets done over the internet on office time. And I think no matter what the purpose of the people using the town computer, the town should be keeping an eye on that and make sure that it's not being abused.
Steve, what about these blogs? Aren't they going to really start discouraging people from running for office if they know that they're going to be attacked?
Can I take that question second?
Sure.
Answer your first one first.
Sure.
As to what a selectman can do with regard to civility, I think it starts with setting an example. But that starts also with setting forth facts, as opposed to speaking strictly from opinion or conjecture or throwing about a spurious allegation. Start with facts, because that's what we're elected for. We're elected to manage on the basis of facts. Ideally, guidance, leadership, character come into play. But it starts with setting an example. Previous speakers have said the same thing. It does make a great deal of sense for the board as a whole to show leadership, to indicate, no, better yet, to state very clearly that there's an expectation of civility. We actually produce that in meetings on a regular basis. If you're going to stand and speak, you announce your name and your address. That's the ticket to deliver your opinion. Very simply put, there's nothing amiss with continuing to request similar processes. I've noticed that the selectmen's meeting, frankly, for the 12 years I've watched it, doesn't run by order. Interestingly enough, town meeting runs by Robert's Rules of Order, and as a result, there's a very clear step of debate, redress. If you're ready to close off debate, you have redress to stop that, continue it if necessary, if the town meeting feels it's necessary. The very same process could and should be used to run a selectmen's meeting. The net result of that is the crowd, if you will, the audience, is not unruly, but rather they're recognized. And if they're not recognized, then eventually they'll probably find some other way to voice their opinion on an item for which they feel very strongly about. Now, with regard to the second question with blogs, unfortunately, I don't know that it's the selectmen's area to step in and try and repeal the First Amendment. The fact is that we can all speak freely. We are not required to speak freely and announce who we are to everybody. One of the great benefits of the freedom of speech, or the freedom to petition, is that in fact you don't necessarily have to announce, I'm over here and I'm your enemy. I have a different point of view. Does it make it harder to run for office? Certainly it does, but I think you need a bit of a thick skin anyway. After all, this is Massachusetts. This is a blood sport here. And I don't believe that it's necessary that it should be done in a similar way on a local level. But, I mean, I see my name in the comment section on a regular basis. I have been a contributor in the comment section in the past. I put it under my own name. But knowing that I was going to run for office, I shut that down.
Would you support the selectmen writing a letter to the owners of the Ledger, for instance, and indicating that the view of the Board of Selectmen is that they should change their policy so that in order to blog, someone has to give their name?
The short answer is no. I don't believe that is the purview of the selectmen. Again, I don't believe it's the selectmen's area to suddenly try and repeal the First Amendment.
Well, that's not a repeal of the First Amendment. That's just asking the newspaper.
The anonymity, however, is one of the guarantees, and I believe that's I don't believe it's the right thing to do. I frankly think if you have something to say, have the courage of conviction. Tell people who you are. Tell them what you feel. Tell them what you think. Tell them what your facts hold. The rest of it, frankly, as my mother used to say, if you don't have the courage to say it out loud, don't say it. Well, I frankly believe that that's the case. I mean, if you've got something to contribute, contribute it. And if you don't, then, go ahead, hide behind a name, do whatever you want. But I don't give it much credibility.
Okay.
So.
Lee, what can the selectmen do on both the blogs and the committees? We've talked a lot about the Board of Selectmen, but other committees have been issues over the last couple of years.
I believe at the present time, the chairman is looking into, with our attorneys, to see what we can do as selectmen. And that would be towards checking out our own personnel, if that's legal. Maybe contact the papers for the same reason, to see see if they will not stop letting the blogs on there without anybody putting their name on it. But I'd like to get to the blogs. For me, my personal belief is I don't read the blogs very often. And when I do, when it becomes personnel, I'm not interested in the personnel, and I'm interested in the issues that they could possibly bring up. And most of the time I find it's all half-truths. Since I've told you the same thing when we were interviewed, that I don't know any more than anybody else does. If everybody watches the selectmen's meetings, you'll have the same amount of information I have, except for executive sessions. I know that we were talking about civil discourse. Well, it was back, the civil discourse took place when the Water Commission was trying to go out for a 20-year contract. And this may seem strange to everybody here, that I didn't find it appalling. I thought it was good debate. Now, at what extent is the debate to some people? Maybe too much. I would have spoken up if I thought it was, once in a while Ted Carr did hammer down the discussion. But it's very important that people with passion get it out and get their point across. And when you have somebody trying to compete with them, I sit there and I try to decide who's got the best information being put out. And in this case, I was supporting the town manager on that 20-year contract. So I wanted to listen to the water commissioners. I wanted to hear what they had to say. And but the blogging, as I say, the blogs that I've heard of and I've read, which is very few, usually are half-truths. It's only half of what the truth is. They leave out the other half.
I'm sorry, Lee, so it sounds like if town council signs off, then you're supportive of looking at the town employees' computers on this issue? Am I?
Well, like Russ said, I think it should be looked at for all reasons, but that's one that can be done. But we've already had that discussion at the last selectmen's meeting where citizens came in and was very upset. And I think that should be addressed somehow if we have the ability to do that.
Well, what happens, let's say you do that, and you find out that one of your employees is one of these anonymous bloggers, then what?
Good point. Turn it over to the town manager.
Well, what's the town manager gonna do?
I don't-
Fire him and get another
Well, I
lawsuit?
think you then have to.
What are you gonna?
Policies and procedures. I'd say this is the trouble. We're lacking policies and procedures. And with policies and procedures, this can be addressed. And that's what part of the policies and procedures haven't been around for years. And I think with this town manager now, we're trying to address the policies and procedures and HR.
But there is no policy or procedure against blogging.
Not that
So
I
that's
know
why I
of.
wonder
Right.
what would happen if someone was found out.
Probably
So
nothing.
would you support a letter to the newspapers just indicating that the Board of Selectmen urged them to require that people identify themselves before blogging?
I think it'd be a good idea. It stops the rhetoric. It stops the, stops all the, if they'll do it. They probably won't do it, but.
Okay, thanks. Russ, you're first up with this question, which is, do you feel that the town is on the right track financially? And if elected, what would you do over the next 3 years to strengthen our financial position?
We appear to be. I think Mary Gallagher has done an excellent job in her department. We seem to have a control over how we're forecasting going out 5 years now. And I think that it's good that we're funding a stabilization fund. And the OPEB set aside, I think we need to look at somehow a way of increasing that as well as the stabilization fund. I know we're putting this 10% into the stabilization fund, but I think that's something we need to seriously look at. We're not the only ones with that problem, but we need to spend more attention to having reserve funds set aside, so then the event when we do have something of a major expense, that we have the funds to do it. The finances seem to be going very well. We haven't had an override in how many years now? 7, 8
Long
years?
time.
Long time. I like the team that they have set up. I like the process with capital budget, which we've been working with Steve on CPC projects, because I value the input that we get from them. The advisory board's input is very good and on mark. I think it's a reflection of the pool of talent that we have available, not only available to us, but of people who are willing to volunteer for these boards. And I think it will hold us well in the future.
You've worked on the CPC for a long time, but you haven't had a lot of experience with the broader town budget issue.
Correct.
Do you feel this is any disadvantage to you coming in on a Board of Selectmen?
No, because that's one of the reasons we have committees like capital budget and advisory. As I've said in the interview, one of the things I find is that the selectmen aren't listening to some of their committees as well as they should be, and that's why we have those committees, and I think we need to rely more on them.
Okay. Steve, you've been on capital budget for some time and used to the budget situation. What do you think of the financial situation the town is in now?
The town is in a fledgling positive trajectory. Fledgling because you might remember that it was only a year ago that a spending freeze brought us to a balanced budget by the close of the fiscal year. In fact, we are where we are at the moment because of really 3 things. One, were a set of objectives put into place by the town meeting last year that essentially set as goals for ourselves the ability to acquire and then maintain a AAA bond rating. Now, that may not seem like much to most people, but it's like having a very high credit score. And the only way you get there is by having sound management practices, and a solid balance sheet. We put together some very specific, the budget planning group, along with the town manager, put together some very specific recommendations, and town meeting adopted those. They included, as Russ had just mentioned, making targeted deposits into the stabilization fund, trying to get to the standard of 10% of our operating budget over time. Likewise, making consistent deposits into the capital stabilization fund, which, while low, are growing, and growing at a clip that should be able to help us make the necessary repairs and replacements that we have coming up. It won't do much to help us with new projects, but it will set us at least on the track of maintaining the services that we have. Still another area that causes me some concern, however, and lends to the fledgling characterization, is that we're only doing this because every single year we take the maximum increase in our taxes, 2.5% every year. We never have asked for less. The town has never said, please, let us take 2.4%, 2.3% increase over the previous year. So we just assume that taxpayers in this town will take that compounded increase on a regular basis and not squawk. But somewhere between 5 and 8 years from now, we're going to have some very difficult choices to make, because, number one, we have, well, frankly, we don't have population on our side. We don't have demographics on our side. And that OPEB liability is going to come home to roost. And it's going to require us to start paying out at a much more rapid clip for retirees' insurances. And that will tend to take money from the operating budget, which would otherwise go to public safety, to the DPW, for everything from maintaining our ball fields and green spaces to trash pickup at the schools. It could have an impact on what we can afford to fund the schools with. The other point, and this is not a small thing, we receive monies from the state, the schools receive grants, they also receive monies from the state. Those are discretionary funds. Those are given to the town every year, and they are not guaranteed either in their amount or their arrival, yet we use them in our budget. It's not unlike getting a consistent gift from your uncle at Christmas every year, but building your lifestyle around it. Someday that Christmas gift may not show up, but you've already built a lifestyle around the assumption that it will. That can be a dangerous event, and it's one that I frankly think we ought to start to try and wean ourselves off, if in fact our goal is to keep the fabric of this community as it is now, that our older folks can afford to live here, that young families can be attracted here because they know that not only can they buy a piece of property, but they can afford to pay the ever-rising taxes on it.
You mentioned the taxes going up the maximum 2.5% every year, but you also talk about the OPEB issue,
right,
and these other concerns. So just to be clear, realistically, we're never going to take under 2.5%. We can't.
At the moment, it's very difficult to see where that will come from. You're absolutely right. And the reason for that is that it's not Proposition 2.5, it's that we have a residential tax base. We have never really put a very concerted effort to determine what it is that we could attract, even though we have land for it, what could we attract for commercial property, for a commercial tax base. Hingham doesn't have our problem.
They have
Norwell.
Derby Street.
Right. Well,
They have
Hingham
one.
and they have there are sections of Acord Park and so
Sure.
on. Likewise, Norwell doesn't have our problem.
They have
Hanover
53.
doesn't have our problem.
They have Route 53. I mean, we
Right.
don't have, thank God, Route 53.
No.
So we're never going to have much of a commercial base. Maybe we can make it a little bigger,
Well, we may
but
not
realistically, it's
Mark,
not
we may
gonna
not
be.
have a retail base, but I'd remind everybody that there is an entire economy that's based on telephone lines now, not on roadways. And those are areas that we can look to determine whether or not we have such a capability. There are research functions that are looking for pockets of brain power. Geez, I'd argue that we have a pretty good one here on the South Shore, but those are areas that we might examine as opportunities. They're not going to solve anything tomorrow, however. That's a longer term plan. The short answer to your question is you're absolutely right. It's hard to see a way out of the 2.5% annual increase unless we start to examine what it is we want for services, what it is we're willing to pay for services, and how we anticipate our town to look, to feel, and to act 10 years from now.
Lee, can we ever get under the 2.5%? I know you'd like to.
It covered
but
everything.
realistically, do you see us getting on the road toward that?
Well, I'd like to say, in 10 years, at a 2.5 increase, as we've been doing, it's over 30% tax increase in 10 years. That's what it is, at 2.5% every
Compounding.
year, compounded. But you asked in the beginning about the 3 years, what we can do in the next 3-year period. But I'm just going to comment on that. We have all the technical expertise in town to be able to start to look at every phase of what the town does. And that's the technology, we have engineering, and we have a financial department. And these are 3 keys that you need to do the proper analyzation. The problem in the past is we haven't had these keys, and secondly, we haven't had the time. So over the next 3 years, I feel very strongly that we're going to have the time to do the analysis. Granted, after we find out where we can cut, not so much cut, save on different things that we do. Well, for one thing, the phones, roughly $85,000 a year, the total town for the schools and everybody else, we pay about $85,000 in payments to the telephone company for telephone service. The technology director has come before the selectmen and said, you know, we can get that down very low by bringing T1 and T3 lines in, which are strictly high-speed communication lines. And this would be some cost to us, but if the cost benefit outweighs or saves us the $85,000 a year over time, it's definitely worth looking at. But a lot of these savings are only a one-time savings, and that's what Steve has been getting at, is that the one-time savings is great, but it may save you for a couple of years, but it's not a continual savings. And what I mean is that you just drop the tax rate to cover the savings, but it doesn't keep going down because of the savings. And I feel, I know I would like to have even this year at least shown the taxpayer, instead of a 2.5, maybe a 2.4, 2.3, something to say, hey, we're looking at the tax base and see if we can save you money. But I don't think you can say it's hopeless. I think you have to look at it, and I think it has a lot of components. We have the OPEC problem with the unfunded health care and also unfunded pension liabilities. I don't know how that's going to be carried, but I don't think the town's going to be able to handle that. And
Well, I guess that's one of my points, is with that OPEB big nut that everyone agrees we have to start putting money aside. How can we not take 2.5%, and if there's extra money, not throw it into that?
well, as the town manager right now, if it does come to pass, and I believe it is, we're supposed to get a 7.5% increase in our health care costs, which was somewhere around $300,000 town cost increase in the current employees. He's negotiated, I believe, and the unions have agreed to something to do with the prescription drugs. They have to pay a little bit more on the prescription drugs, and the insurance company has agreed to a 0.5% increase over a 7.5. Now, in theory, with the 7%, that will go into the OPEC. That'll be put into the unfunded health care. That's what the idea is. Now, granted, we put $50,000 or $100,000 in the fund. It's not anywhere near enough when you have a $38 million unfunded health care. But it's an attempt. But I don't know, the town will have to make that decision. If they want a tax cut and then a slight tax cut. But there also, one other thing that can be done that I've been thinking about, and it's a one-time thing, is that the CPC can be taken from 1.5% to 0.75%, which is a direct savings to all. At least it's a one-time savings. But then the next year, of course, it'll be 0.75% again.
Thanks.
So,
Karen, finances.
When I first was a selectman, I came in with the goal to address all the issues that have been discussed by the others. And that's why I worked with the then town manager, Bill Griffin, and eventually with the advisory board, and we formed the budget planning group. And the goal for the budget planning group was not to look at the budget item by item, but to look at these bigger, broader challenges facing the town and to determine what could be done, if anything, how we could be more efficient. Why was our budget structured the way it was? Are we using the best allocation for our resources? I sat in at the capital budget meetings along with the town manager, who was also the proponent for the IT audit and what came after it. When we had the insolvency of the Water Enterprise Fund, I immediately insisted that we have a forensic audit, not just an audit, a forensic audit, to show what had happened, why it happened, and what we needed to do to make sure that it never happened again. And I'm very proud to say that a lot of the, or all of the financial reform that we've seen occur over the past 2 years can find its roots in the auditor's report that came out of that audit. So obviously my commitment to fiscal responsibility and financial reform is there. I would continue doing it. I think that it's nice to talk about taking 2% instead of 2.5%, but given where the town has come from in the past 2 years, the challenges that we all agree the town is going to face in the next few years, I think we have to be honest with the taxpayers. Mr. Jenkins, one of the things I was very concerned about is that we
Karen,
had.
if you could just address me, not
I'm sorry.
specific names.
Now I totally
You
lost
said
my
one
place.
of the things that you were concerned about.
One of the things I was concerned about as a selectman was that there was no funding source for the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance of the town. That we had found a funding source for capital budget, and that was a good thing. And I did bring forward to the CPC, which Russ was not chair then, and got thoroughly thumped. But what I had looked at was that, not that CPC hadn't done many good things, because they had, but a lot of the projects that were coming forward seemed to be more in the maintenance area. And using CPC for maintenance, although it's allowed under certain regulations, is very restrictive. We couldn't do it, say, for town hall. So if we were to reduce the amount of contribution to CPC, town meeting could vote to do that. Town meeting could then vote, which has finally happened at this last town meeting, and again, I was very pleased to see it happen because Bill Griffin and I had worked on it, a stabilization fund for the maintenance. So whatever percentage was taken off CPC could then be a dedicated source for maintenance. It wouldn't be much, it would never meet the totals, but it would be a start, it would be something. We have a lot of challenges facing us. There are a lot of different areas in town, but we're a community, and as a community we should care about all of them, whether it's the schools or the seniors or public safety. And everything's expensive, and it's getting more expensive, and we have to find ways to either live within our budget or to increase the budget, and that will have to be up to the voters of the town.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll start off with you, Steve. A significant amount of the voters are parents of school-aged children whose most important concern may be the quality of our public schools. Why should these voters support your candidacy?
That's a good question. Well, like the group of people that you're describing, I still have a child in school. As a matter of fact, I think I'm the only candidate that can say that. All three of my children have gone through the school system. One is a freshman in high school at the moment. Both my wife and I are products of public school systems. So we appreciate, well, very much appreciate the results of the efforts of the teachers, the administration. But just as importantly, schools don't run simply on the labor of love that many of the teachers bring to it. It also requires a good deal of commitment with regard to infrastructure, supplies, etc. As part of the Capital Budget Committee, we worked with the schools in a very rigorous manner to find ways to fund some of their critical needs. We were criticized for many years for declining, if you will, or recommending against a capital spending plan for IT that had no specific objective, it had no specific use. It simply was a line item saying we need $100,000 over the next 5 years. That prompted us, though, to set off on a mission to determine what the IT needs were. The end result, of course, is the IT director, which is shared by the schools and by the town, who took the analysis that was completed and recommendations made and turned it into a living plan, a plan that calls for and has now installed an entirely new IT system, an entirely new boxes, if you will, computers for the entire school system. There were the efforts that Barbara Cataldo has put together with this IT director and has been supported by the Capital Budget Committee are beginning to look for the integration of using technology and curriculum development such that a teacher could possibly develop her own curriculum or his own curriculum during the summer to be delivered by way of technology. On its own, simply allocating dollars to schools doesn't make a difference. It really comes down to being an advocate and supporting those schools, whether it's a bus replacement program or advocating for the turf field that the private citizens group supported, and to the extent of picking up more than half the cost of its installation. But the support for the other half, the town funding, that came from our committee, and I was a vocal supporter of that.
There's been some talk about privatization of schools. What does that mean to you, and what are your thoughts?
I think that privatization of schooling is really, in my opinion, or my view, another word for competition. Invariably, the costs of any school system, any public school system, are going to be driven by labor, by the cost of teachers, the contracts under which they work, et cetera. And interestingly enough, organized labor typically doesn't necessarily represent those folks who actually do the work. They represent larger agendas, larger ideas that may have nothing to do with the actual delivery, the consistent, effective delivery of education at the local level, at the ground level, in the students. So privatization is a method of competition. The simplest kind that you've seen or that we've seen is through the use of charter schools. Although they are not private, they're still functions, if you will, of the educational system. That competition alone is often enough to cause a change in the direction and tenor of discussion. Privatization in other areas of the country are the adoption of a municipality to use a private school, to literally pay tuition for their students to go to that private school, instead of taking on the capital expense and the labor negotiations that result from a public school system.
Okay. Lee, your thoughts? Why should
Steve covers it all.
Yeah, well, you just wanted to say you agree with what he said, or?
No, I'd just like to say I've lived in Cohasset for 35 years, and I've raised both my daughters. I have two daughters, and they both have gone through K through 12 in Cohasset school systems. I have found them excellent. They've all gone to good colleges, and I'm a product of public school systems. As Steve has said, the town is trying to share as much of the burden of the schools with taking over some of the IT costs from the schools. Schools need the IT as much as the town does. And the maintenance, we've taken away the maintenance out of the schools to try to give the schools some breathing room and more expertise in the maintenance of their buildings. Also, we have an agreement with them that 61% of our budget goes to the schools and 39% goes to the town. This is a very helpful thing on both parties. It keeps everybody in line, and we try to keep it that way, and it's worked. I think for the last 4 years, about 4 or 5 years. It's been very effective. But if we're talking about a regionalization of the schools, I don't think the town would ever do it. I just don't think I don't know if it's the sports or I know in many cases this just reminds me of, we are doing some of the sports with other towns, which is cost savings for us, and it gives the students opportunity of more activities to do. And I know at some point, I believe our students can.
Someone didn't turn their phone off.
I did.
I won't say your name.
But I think the students have the opportunity to leave the system And with the MBTA system that we have here, the trains, I believe you can go into BU, I believe you can go into UMass Boston, and you can take college courses, which is a tremendous opportunity for our small system. But I don't believe we'll ever get to the point where we're going to be able to regionalize or switch with 2 different towns in this area. It just is not going to work.
And this privatization issue that we were just discussing, is that something you're interested in looking at or not?
I don't think so. I don't think it'll work in Cohasset.
Karen?
Well, I never had children, so I never had any children in the school system. That doesn't mean I'm any less supportive of the schools. And as a selectman, what I did was to reach out to the school committee. I believe that we have 2 very separate boards, committees. We have the Board of Selectmen, which oversees the town side. We have the school committee, which oversees the schools. I don't think that it's necessary for those to be totally separate and there not to be communication between them. But I think that there has to be respect on both sides for the needs of the other. And again, that was one of my goals in bringing forward the budget planning group, was so that we could have everybody around the table at the same time talking about everything. And it did take some time. I do remember in the very beginning, it was like a CYO dance, and I don't know if anybody down here knows what that is, but it was, the schools on one side and the town on the other side. And one day I just got up and I sat down in the middle of the school people next to Adrian McCarthy, and everybody was aghast. But it opens up the conversation. It gets everybody talking and understanding and communicating, which is the way the best solutions are resolved. As for privatization, I believe that public school is a foundation of our country, and that it ensures that it should ensure that every student gets a good education. That's certainly the case here in Cohasset. That's not something that our community has to be concerned with, although other communities do. I think that this community as a whole has been very supportive of the schools. I don't think you'll find anybody of any age within this community, whether if you're a senior, you probably have had children going through the schools, you've been paying your taxes, you don't begrudge your taxes. If you're a school-age parent, then obviously you're very supportive of the schools. That's your priority at that stage in your life, and that's what you're looking for, and that's why you see the rise of the private groups that have come forward, like the CEF, which have made a huge difference. But the bottom line is, whether it's the taxpayer donating privately or the taxpayer supporting the schools through their taxes, it's still the taxpayer. So we have to be very aware of that and ensure that we can have the best education for our children while not negatively impacting the other services of the town, and do the impossible of staying within our budget.
Russ, schools.
Schools. I too never had children, but I understand fully the value of what the school does for us. It's one of the reasons why my particular house is worth what it is versus if it were in other towns with less of a school system. I like the way that we are sharing with the technology with the schools now, and looking for ways to utilize some town resources to help the students get as good education as they can. We ranked 99% in math and 98% in English, and it behooves us to make sure that we stay at those levels. We have to make sure that as technology changes, that our students have the latest technology. It's akin to not having even pen and pencils when we were kids. If they don't have the resources available to them, I was happy to get involved with the PTO on the Deer Hill project. CPC just recently made an approval, and town meeting overwhelmingly backed it. I've done volunteer work at different school projects, and I think it's one of the major things we have that makes the town as desirable as it is. Their budget, as far as privatization, I agree with Lee. I don't think it would work here, or regionalization. I too went to public schools, and I did go to some regional schools in the Pennsylvania area, and I think you get a better education in a non-regionalized school. I think in that area you needed it because you had such small towns, and it just wasn't economically feasible to have each town support a school.
Okay, Russ. Well, I'm being told that we are almost out of time, or maybe we already are, but what the hell, it's my show, so we're gonna go on.
Good
But
to be
only
king.
briefly. Lightning round. So real quick answers here. Lee, we're gonna start with you. You have served, all of you have served as elected or appointed officials in this town. Looking back over your years of service, what do you view as your most significant accomplishment, and what, if anything, do you wish you had done differently? Real quick, Lee.
You already asked that question before.
No,
Okay.
go ahead.
Yes, when I was in the advisory board, I noticed that the union contracts came before the advisory board 1 hour before a town meeting. I got a citizen's petition to go to town meeting and have that changed, so it was 30 days before town meeting. I also, it may sound crazy to people, that I also was on the committee, or on the citizens group, to make the town finance department come up with month-to-date and quarter-to-date financial reports, which has really proved to make the town a far better place to operate in.
Any regrets?
No, I can't think of it right now.
I'll give you a couple more minutes just in case. Karen,
Well, I'll be repeating myself, but there are,
just emphasize.
I'm emphasizing the fact that it was through my efforts that the budget planning group was formed, that the audit took place, and the financial reforms began. The other area I'm very proud of is when I was chair of the Harbor Health Committee, which Russ also sat on. And we were just a group of citizens that knew absolutely nothing about marine biology, but we knew there was something wrong with the harbor. We reached out to state agencies, and through that, the town benefited by receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars of free testing for the harbor. What do I regret? I regret that the water department went insolvent and that we had a financial crisis, and that most of my chairmanship on the Board of Selectmen was totally consumed by that. And I got absolutely nothing else done.
Russ?
Well, the impact I think I've had on the town is through the work I've done on the Haggerty Committee, which developed the Mariners Park at the end of Parker Ave. I was involved with Karen, as she said, in the Harbor Health Committee. Worked on getting the waters off our shores declared a no discharge zone. With CPC, we recently made a grant to the sailing club. I was a member of the Government Island Study Committee when I first moved into town. And it's been a real pleasure to work on projects such as those that'll have a long-lasting impact on the town. What do I regret? That I hadn't moved here about 10 years earlier, probably.
Okay. Steve?
Geez, probably the brightest spot that I could point to is having the pleasure to recruit now some 7 different members of the Capital Budget Committee who showed me month in and month out what professionalism was all about. During that period of time, this group of people worked side by side to develop both a process and a comprehensive approach that included everything from recommending bylaw changes and getting those passed, to defining the role of the committee, and then finally to finding a source and creating a source for funding things that make a difference in the lives of every citizen in this town. Whether it's a new football field, or buses, or making sure that we efficiently spent money on things as mundane as police cruisers or computers. That's the ability to point to those people that I had the pleasure of working with and say, geez, you know, every day they showed me what it was like to be a professional. That's probably my proudest moment. Regrets? Maybe that I didn't get involved earlier. That may sound funny after 12 years and several different committees. But it's working with people like that. Whether or not you always agree with them doesn't matter. The fact is that you find out what it means to be a, sound corny, but government of the people, by the people, for the people. You work with them every day.
Okay, very good. You look at me, you
Found
regret?
something.
You found a
He has
regret?
few. Go ahead.
He regrets he
Well,
didn't find it sooner.
The problems we've had with the last town manager and the way it all went down, that's a regret I have, but
Okay,
we didn't do it right.
thank you, thank you. Okay, it is time for closing statements. And again, 3 minutes. Karen, we'll start with you.
First, I'd like to thank you and Pat for once again hosting this debate, and it's a great service to the community and gives the public the opportunity to hear the views of all the candidates. When I first ran for selectman, I was no stranger to town hall, having sat on various environmental committees and chaired the Harbor Health Committee. I knew the players and the issues. My term as selectman only broadened that experience, and in the 2 years since, I've learned a lot, staying involved and continuing to listen to the concerns of the public. Strangely enough, the reasons I ran for selectman haven't changed. A need for communication, cooperation, and common sense in the way we do the business side of Cohasset. What has changed is the tenor at Town Hall. The past 2 years have been dominated by turmoil, divisiveness, and a lack of professionalism that has resulted in unnecessary litigation and legal expense and placed the town in jeopardy. That is unacceptable and has to change. It speaks to the necessity of experienced professional management to guide us, and if elected, I will move to immediately advertise for a new town manager and support the open, inclusive police chief search. It gives me great satisfaction, as I've said, to know that my insistence on a forensic audit in the wake of the water enterprise crisis was the genesis for the much-needed financial reform that has occurred over the past 2 years. The highly touted budget planning process is a product of the budget planning group, a group I supported and with the town manager. I'll skip over that because I've already said it 3 times. Our town employees are not just boxes on a PowerPoint presentation. They are people who serve our town well and deserve to be treated better. If changes in the structure of town government are warranted, the process should be collaborative, not dictatorial. In securing the well-being of the community, we must not harm individuals. With rising costs and diminishing state aid, the budget process isn't going to get any easier. Priorities must be made, but in finding a solution, we need to recognize that for some, such as those living on a fixed income or struggling in this economy, taxes can be burdensome. I should have done this. Quality education, elder services, public safety, and maintenance of our buildings and infrastructure are equally important and expensive, and yet we must find a way to fund each. I always made the hard decisions, challenged the status quo, and stood for reform and fiscal responsibility. I stuck with the issues and didn't let personalities or politics influence my decisions. That won't change. Some say being a selectman is a thankless job. I never found it to be so. I enjoyed the job. I enjoyed working with the people at Town Hall. I enjoyed working with the town employees. I enjoyed working with the residents. And if you elect me, I look forward to the opportunity to do so again. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Russ?
Thanks. I've lived in Cohasset for 28 years now, and I actually sailed to the end of Parker Ave. I'd never heard of the town before. Brought a friend's boat down, walked into town, came back and thought, what a great little town this is. I used to summer in a small town in the Poconos, and it had a similar feel, except the plus was that it had a beach. Cohasset, at that time, I was very fortunate to run into people like Mary Fleming, Ham Tewksbury, Noel Ripley, people who had had a big impact on this town, who appreciated the history of it. I got involved through those people in the Government Island Study Committee prior to the Lighthouse Keepers. I was one of the original members and the chairman on the Haggerty Committee when we implemented the plan to develop the park at the end of Parker Ave. I've been on the Community Preservation Committee for 2 years. I'm very proud of the work that we've done to improve the look of the town. It's a great group of individuals who are very dedicated in that most of them have to be on another committee to be on the CPC. And I've been proud to chair them. I was proud to work with Karen on the Harbor Health Committee. I have an ability, I believe, to reach consensus. When I took over the Haggerty Committee, we had 17 members. We have 9 on the CPC, and while not everything we do is unanimous, I think we can find the middle ground. I've worked with various groups in the town on the Board of Selectmen currently, with the exception of Diane, and only because I didn't know her. I have campaigned for everybody on that board. I worked both sides of the aisle, if you will. I have an independent voice. Some of my supporters will agree with me on some things and vehemently disagree on others. But I would like to bring an independent voice to the Board of Selectmen. I will listen to people. I will listen to the committees that are appointed to advise the board. And I would like to have the opportunity to serve 3 years on the Board of Selectmen. If I graced with one of your votes, I'll work as hard as I ever have on any other projects I've been involved in.
Thanks, Russ. Steve?
Thanks, Mark, and Pat off camera. She was the one with the phone.
Yes.
Thanks for inviting us. It's a great opportunity to field questions that might be on the minds of voters and have a few minutes to explain where you're coming from. I started in the candidacy and made a very simple point. As to the taxpayers, I'm on your side. I care about the taxpayers, and I want good government. Good government is very simply put, it's predictable. The processes are understood. It's transparent. It's clear to everybody what's taking place. And finally, it's accountable. That is to say, your elected officials can stand up and take the slings and arrows just as well as they can take the roses thrown at their feet. But at the same time, I'm not here to make a speech about me in these last few minutes. I think it's more about you. Because in the end, we're representatives of you. In between town meetings, we are your instruments to conduct deliberations, set objectives, to set policy. We execute that as a board of directors. We've been elevated out of the daily role as selectmen, should we be lucky enough to be elected that. And as a result of that, we are the instruments of town meeting, which are you, the voters. I can promise you only one thing, and that is that you'll always get my candid and unvarnished opinion. And that opinion will be backed by facts. It's your town. It's your tax dollars that support the town. And all I wish to do is be a very good steward of your tax dollars. And I think the track record that I have holds up to that exactly. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Lee?
I want to thank Pat and Mark for giving the community a chance to meet the candidates. I decided to run for the second term, which I wasn't really planning to do when my first term, but I've done that so that the reforms that were started under the acting town manager can continue to provide the financial stability needed to keep Cohasset on a more affordable plane. Having been a school parent for many years and now on the other end of the spectrum, I realize the implications of unrestrained taxes to young families and seniors. I'm going to make this real short. The viewers have any questions about my opinions or goals, please contact me at my home phone or jenkins4cohasset@gmail.com or visit my Facebook page at Jenkins for Cohasset. I am asking for your support and vote on May 11th.
Thank you very much, Lee. And I do want to thank all of you, not just for coming here tonight and offering your views, but also for the service you have already provided to the town, each and every one of you, and your willingness to continue to do so. So thank you very much on behalf of me and behalf of the entire town. So that's it, folks. The Selectmen's debate for 2013. Now it's up to you. Election day is the 11th of May. Be sure to vote, and we hope we've helped you make your decision somewhat tonight. So for now, for Pat with the telephone, and me and the entire crew here, good night. Oh, she deserves it.